I wonder if YouTube minds if I actually stream something. Oh boy, now that's screwed up. Oh, much better. Almost ready, but not quite. Oh, it's cold in here. My AC be tripping. Settle down there, settle down. I'm sitting here getting the fucking sniffles in my own house. Jeez. Well, anyways, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Easy Reefers Coastal Restoration Fish Room of Science. Oh, 5-3 on the introduction. Apparently 2 people don't like introductions. Anyways, so, thanks for joining us, people who have actually joined us and are not just, trolls with no lives or talents or jobs or things like that. And as always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. And if it's your birthday, happy birthday. In fact, let's do the little happy birthday song just because we can. Where is it? Come here, happy birthday song. Is it in this other window? Where is it? Oh, it's so wonderful. I must hear it. Okay, I'm done. It makes me happy. But as for the remainder of the broadcast, the topics that we're going to be covering here, doesn't make me very happy. Doesn't make me happy that we have, like, all of us have supercomputers that just, like, smell our farts half the day. But we still haven't learned to stop dumping all of our refuse and bullshit and chemicals into the ocean. And at the same time, despite the fact that we can keep saltwater reef tanks, we haven't, thought maybe we should provide some additional filtration to these ecosystems. Maybe we should practice stewardship. Huh. You would think stewardship would be something that it wouldn't be hard, it wouldn't be difficult to get religious people behind. Stewardship. Taking care of God's creation. This is something that everyone should agree about. And I think a good way to spot somebody who's just up to no good, in general, is if they have a problem with stewardship. So anyways, the past few months since I started discussing red tide, I don't know if it's just become more and more widespread of a thing, or it's just coming here more often, or I'm just noticing it more. Seems like it might be all three. Well, the reporting on these red tides, and they'll show you aerial video of green and red tides. But when they go and show you the actual little laboratory and they go and tell you what species, they're telling you a species of algae, and it's not red, it's green. And they're talking about the toxins that these phytoplanktons form in the water, and yeah, that's a problem. If any photosynthetic organism blooms too much in the water, it's gonna offset the entire chemistry of the water. Same thing with coral. Same thing with anything but macroalgae, like actual, multicellular structure plants. But what puzzles me is that there is no mention of the thing that actually causes the red in red tide, and that's cyanobacteria. Now, I made this map to be hyperbolic, but I stand behind this map just the way I stood behind Russia being behind most of the propaganda influences predating the 2016 election, which I was stating in the Support Ukraine USA Facebook or group, whichever you prefer, one of which is delicious. As early as, March of 2014, but I've been warning about a lot of things that seem very obvious to a lot of people now. And, as accurate as I was about those things, I don't feel like I knew as much as far as real-world experience, as far as gathering scientific data, as I do about this. I feel like I know a lot more about this than the things that I've already been right about. Now, this other algae species seems to be a pain in the ass. And there's a lot of different single-celled algae that form from the same conditions depending on the trace mineral contents and the temperature and salinity of the water. Every different type of singular-celled algae bloom prefers a different, rate. But the shittier it gets, the less it becomes a phytoplankton thing and more it becomes a cyanobacteria thing. And, I've just learned this from experience, just seeing the progression of algae as they break down over time, as water conditions deteriorate, as nitrates and phosphates increase in the water, and as the cyanobacteria goes up, the oxygenation that you provide to the water matters less and less. And that oxygen just gets taken right out of the water. And the fish, no matter, like, you can have 4 different air stones in a little grow out tank, and if you got a cyanobacteria problem, all those fish are going to be breathing heavy. Okay, and you can see there's an oxygen problem in that water. Those fish's gills are getting inflamed because they're having a hard time breathing enough. You take the cyanobacteria off the glass, you take that dingy reddish brown water out of there, everybody's fine. Or take the cyanobacteria off of there and add a protein skimmer. Very simple, very energy efficient device. Something that we do not have the option of failing to use. Okay, now I want you to picture, in fact, I'm going to see if I can pull up a clip. Picture all these different red tide scenes that you've seen recently. Okay, I mean, they're disgustingly tragic. They've had whale sharks and dolphins and just probably millions of fish by now washing up dead on the coast of Florida. And Dad, if you're watching this, get back to Florida. Play your flute or something, for fuck's sake. Because at this point, you know, we need the equipment already built and in the water yesterday. But we're talking about less than $30 million to solve this problem. Okay? Consider the money that we spend on shit. $30 million isn't a lot. $30 million for the state of Florida to not have dead shit washing up everywhere. How much tourism are you losing right now? Now I'm going to, in a little while, pull up MS Paint and sketch out a design that I've had for a number of years. And I'm going to show you the basics of this design for its durability and ease of construction. And I'll give you an idea of the multiple configurations that you can adapt to it depending on how much you want to spend per unit. But from there, you know, I guess I'm just going to have to let go of this whole idea of a patented version of this, because y'all pretty much need all the options at this point. There's just too much dying over there. Fucking money doesn't even matter at this point. So I'm just going to give you one of my very best ideas. And these things need to be installed at every river mouth, at every drainage point, and basically you're going to have a small maintenance crew that are going to have to, you know, see to each one of these pylons maybe once a week. But there's a lot of options as far as whether you want to pump the waste back on shore to make biodiesel, or what these particular designs provide is a way to actually avoid draining the skimmate altogether, and actually provide a place for it to process naturally outside or floating above the water. Okay. So anyways, don't think I'm naive whenever I make a large claim about the performance of something I've designed. I intensely study catastrophe in every aspect, whether it be earthquakes, tsunamis, tornadoes, hurricanes. And when I go to the beach, whether it's in the Atlantic or Pacific, I have enough experience with waves and surf and being on the ocean that I don't ever get knocked down. Anyways, I think I say that just because there's so many hilarious videos of people who don't seem to understand how to stand in a wave or put their surfboard underneath one. Okay, let's just leave my board at the surface and dive. What the fuck is that? And it's always these people with these big fucking really sharp pointed boards too, you know? Like, I guess all the boards are sharp pointed now. They used to have round pointed boards back in the fucking mid 80s when I surfed. I was little, but I loved it, man. Wirral Bay made it easy. You can find that if you want to search for where I'm talking about in New Zealand. Princess Bay, New Zealand, is what most people will title it as. Wirral Bay is the sandy beach that you can see on the other side of the water, kind of. Anyways. I was very blessed by fate to have gotten to live in New Zealand because it gave me a different perspective on, I suppose, politics once I got to realize how fucked up America was, you know? I never lost my perspective on it. But what it really made me appreciate was nature. My favorite thing to do when I was 5 years old was look at low tide pools. Just stare at them. I mean, just stare at them. I would occasionally help a starfish or something find its way back to water or something like that, you know. And of course, when we found ones that were dried out, we always took them home, and because they were fucking awesome. Felt almost like they were made of like a brittle stone, kind of. Serpent stars. And when I moved back to America, moved back to Houston, Texas, on the Gulf Coast. Let's see here. We have a lovely graphic of the Gulf Coast. Actually, I got a couple of graphics. Let's see here. This will work just fine. On the Gulf Coast of the good old US of A. And we went to Galveston, and I was not impressed. Not only did the water just look awful. But yeah, since I've been making this claim that we could turn all of the Gulf Coast into a pristine aquatic environment, suddenly there's been this really wild, crazy current change, and there's blue, clear water off the coast of Galveston, and there's shitty, greenish, reddish, brown water, like swirling different colored, fucked up water off the coast of Florida. So my advice would be, don't take your understanding for granted. When it seems that if one looks at the history of knowledge and how it evolves, realism requires humility. Every 20 or 30 years, most of what we think about something is contradicted or at least evolved upon considerably. And I don't mean basic fundamentals, I mean, applicable understandings. I don't think anyone a year ago, actually, I don't think anyone, the moment I said that we could have pristine water off the coast of Galveston and Grand Isle, is what I said. I don't think any biological scientist, any marine ecologist, any marine biologist, anybody, not the National fucking Weather Service, would have said it was possible to ever see clear blue water off the coast of Galveston and Grand Isle. But guess what? It just happened. Now let's see here. I'm going to have to go into my history. And CGTN. Well, the other one's CBS Miami. So I guess I'll try to select a little clip from this. Give me 1 second, please. Oh, stop being a jackass, you silly little fucking camera stand. That's what I get for arranging from price low to high. Oh wait, that's not even at the straight angle. I'll move it over here if I'm going to be that OCD about it, dumbass. this is just taking way too long. I apologize. Okay. So, thank you to China for your YouTube channel. I'm not sure what CGTN actually stands for nowadays, but they've recently changed it from CCTV to CGTN. And this is The World Today, doing a report on Florida's southwest coast hit by dangerous toxic algae bloom.
Dead fish, stranded turtles, even a dead whale shark, all likely victims of the red tide. Algae blooms affect the Gulf Coast every year, but this one is particularly menacing and toxic.
Is that red? Like, have you know, I've always had really good eyesight. Like, you know, the dress was blue and white to me. I could see both, or blue and gold. I can see like the varying frequencies of a single image. To me, that shit looks green. Anybody else want to comment on what color? Stuff in the water they were just showing, that looks green. Are they just calling it red tide for the fun of it?
To wildlife and humans.
So red tide is the result of what happens when a certain organism, a phytoplankton, Carenia brevis, grows.
Carenia brevis. Okay, that is not red tide. That's green tide. So, here's Newsy's take on it. Let's see.
The algae blooms off Florida's west coast.
That doesn't look like Florida.
Also known as red tide, have been getting worse, and while it can be deadly
But you can see that water's red.
for wildlife, humans are affected too. Blooms of algae, which
That's the algae that dude was just talking about.
may or may not be red,
Oh, may or may not be red. It's not red tide, is it? Still disgusting.
release a poisonous substance called brevity.
Very good. Thank you for your little icon there. Newsy's a good little channel if you want to stay up to date about, you know, the basics on current events. So, let me just, before I move on, it'll probably be quicker for me to search. KHOU Blue Water Galveston. Oh, or just blue water, how about that? So this has been 2 months ago it started, and there's 2 weeks ago. How long will the clear water in Galveston stay? So
The news seems to be true. Social media is still buzzing over the water.
thanks to KHOU for being the first actual news station I ever watched. Well, that I remember, at least. And let me just say, I really miss Marvin Zindler, Eyewitness News. I'm not even sure if that's the right channel, but I know they love the guy. Anyways.
So we want to know.
That, the old KHOU tower was right there by my old neighborhood in A-Leaf. So, let me just get to the report so you can see. That's fucking Galveston.
Seem to prove it. Galveston Bay seems to be blue.
Let me get the picture just right on that so you can really see it. This is, I mean, this was brown water, okay? This was just the shit of shit. Getting back, I didn't actually complete my statement earlier. I was disappointed, not just by the look of the water, but because I could see just crap being done to it. Like, just every, you know, I guess quarter mile or so. Not on this one little public drag, but like on Matagorda and like on all the other beaches around it. You just have like another drainage stream from some fucking sewage system or something. And there's just like this brown fresh water going into the ocean, and like right where it hits the beach, like the waves just curdle up and bubble, and it's like disgusting. But I mean, get a load of that.
Once again, some out-of-towners might be saying, what's the big deal? But for us Texans, it may not be this, but at least it's not this. But
Yeah, that's what we're used to.
From the brown, we'll take it. For the blue water we saw back. May, it was a change in direction.
Oh my God, look. Wow.
Of ocean currents that push that.
Ocean currents just came right off the land, did they? Oh, okay. That's coming up the other way. Okay. I still don't think you know what the hell you're talking about.
Mud elsewhere, but now what's happening?
Oh my good giddy God. I like I've already seen that, but just that's supposed to be doo-doo brown. It looked like Mississippi River water, okay? That is amazing. And put it on the background shit. What I think that's proof of is that it's us, not the Gulf. If there can be a current out here, and I'm going to show you why there's clean water just right out there in a second. I know exactly where that clean water came from. And you can pull up a lot of different current maps that'll show you a lot of different currents, but there's a general way that this works, and there's general reasons why it changes at different times of the year. And there's general reasons why it's been changing a little bit over time too, with polar ice cap melting and stuff like that. But anyway. So, the reason why there's still hope is because basically the population just hasn't reached the point of no hope. In 10 years, we will. And now, the reason why I say we can turn everything from Galveston to Grand Isle into that all the time is because I understand that there are people who just want to make fucking money. And we need their help too. When it all comes down to it, oil rigs cost money. Oil wells go dry. But stewardship of the environment is one well that doesn't dry up. And real estate is an oil rig that doesn't have to be moved. Oh, but we need oil for... No. We have all the oil we need if we focus on using it for things like lubricants and plastics. Sports cars. We have the capacity as a society at this point to not really need additional oil sources. Now we have other countries that are, trying to improve their way of life with low efficiency and two-stroke engines and things like that. And it's a challenge to get an entire world to follow suit. But you have two options there. Do you give up and say, let's just all die because we can't find the motivation? Or do you lead the way? Now, there are two reasons why the Gulf Coast is not the most successful, beautiful tourist beach Just the entire Gulf Coast should just be this never-ending, wonderful freaking tourist beach. Every city on the Gulf of Mexico should have a wonderful summertime tourist business. Okay? The way people now go to, beaches in South and Central America, go to the Mediterranean just to see the beauty of it, that should be the bar we set. That should be our goal. That should be our standard of stewardship. The two things that are keeping us from having this lucrative investment opportunity at our fingertips. One, hurricanes. Two, failure to mitigate pollution. Now, I'm not talking about industrial waste. That's a big problem too. But as far as quantity and the amount of damage that it does, our biggest issue is food production. Okay? You see, all throughout every side of this map here, let me zoom it in just a little more. Ooh, too much. Way too much. Come on. There, that's fine. It's all around the edge of this map. The monkey chased the weasel. Wait, no. You have river. Industrial bay, industrial canal, industrial lake. One after the other. Now, what is the Central Plains and this whole area of the United States known for around the world? Food production. It was, for a time, the world's breadbasket. And to this day, it has the largest food production capacity in the world. And for good reason. I mean, just natural, geologic, environmental reason. But the consequence of this is we have plants to feed. We have cows that poo. So what we wind up with is a lot of fertilizer runoff. Oh, pigs, cows, chickens, you name it, it's pooing. And, with a lack of any mitigation, a lack of any 100% efficiency type standards, that has caused the Gulf of Mexico to have its lovely brown color. It's not about sediment, okay? sediment settles. When sediment doesn't settle, it's because it's caught in protein. It's caught in detritus. It's because the water is dirty. Now, if you look on the far side of this map, now let me just see if I can become a ghost. Maybe. 1 second. We can clear this up and point it that way. Okay. No, not that. Damn it. This one. Okay. Alright, so here. No. Well, whatever. I'm not very good at this. Where's the fucking picture? No, not that picture. How far down? I don't know if you can tell, but I don't really know what I'm doing here. Oh, there it is. Okay. Come here, you fucker. Now here is basically the point at which pristine water enters from the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico. And this current goes back and forth, and there are vortexes or vortices that form in large areas and then in multiple small areas depending on the time of year, depending on the severity of El Nino and things like that. But what you have is not just one big current of water going this way and one big current of water going this way. You have, lots of little changing streams here and there, and sometimes it goes in one big direction and a couple little, but it's a lot more complicated than these maps that you see, okay? But what usually is really happening here, instead of this being a straight thing, this is actually a bunch of spirals too. You'll have a spiral here, and a bunch of little spirals here, and they all kind of connect, and then you'll see just kind of varying jetties going out to sea. But overall, like the entire Atlantic Ocean, this right here moves clockwise. Okay? So what happens is you have really pretty water down here in Mexico. Okay? They import a lot of their food, right? And their population isn't that large. They have a lot of mountains, not a lot of land mass. They have very condensed city populations, but let's face it, their agriculture is comparable maybe to Texas. Maybe. I don't think it actually even is comparable to Texas. But what happens is, I've been right here, okay, and the water right there is clear, And you keep driving. If you go look at the beach, it'll be clear until you get to the Colorado River. It's right about here. In a town called Corpus Christi, or near a town called Corpus Christi. 15 minutes outside of it, I think. And then from here, all the way up to here, it's kind of greenish blue, not quite pretty. I mean, down here you're talking about tropical island looking beautiful water, okay? Down here I've seen cuttlefish, okay? Up here it's like, you know, nothing spectacular, but not too bad. But then once you get past Matagorda, Brazoria County, where we were just looking at, typically brown, and then just all the way around until you get to Florida. Okay, and that's when you have these sporadic currents, and the Mississippi water comes and washes out this way, and once the Mississippi enters the picture, you've got a whole bunch of area that doesn't really stand a chance, and then this little mixing area where it's like, again, right? And then this kind of spreads out, and everything from like Tampa, well, not, yeah, I guess pretty much Tampa south is usually pretty nice. What we saw just then wasn't very nice. Oh, wrong one. Oh, come on. Where's the freaking... Okay, there we go. So anyways, one of the things that makes the potential of the Gulf of Mexico so incredibly undervalued, you know, like one of the reasons why I say there's so much potential there, it's going to take a little more of a detailed map to explain. So before I get it zoomed in, note the general rigid nature of the oceanic topography of the Caribbean. You know, see all the just increased surface area from numerous ridges and things like that. That's generally good for marine life. Those are generally good things for water quality of the ocean. You know, that's kind of like the ocean's live rock areas, right? But when those types of features occur in more shallow regions, they, you know, can not just sustain abundant fisheries and you know, provide a lot of food, a lot of spawning grounds for, you know, various species, and foundations for coral reefs, that kind of thing. But that's when you really have, like, the type of water that tourists want to go see. You know, the type of water where you want to live when you retire, you know, like. So, Mother Nature loved the Gulf of Mexico so much she gave it a big kiss. Mwah. But as wonderful as that little topographical feature is, that is not the one I'm looking at. What I'm looking at is the reason why the areas between Galveston and Grand Isle have so much potential and could literally be producing 20 times more fish than they are. And certainly you'd have about a 60-fold tourism revenue increase for the states of Texas and Louisiana. Oop. Wrong way. That's good. Now you see, it's very apparent that there have been many huge runoff events. I mean, just cataclysmic runoff events that have dumped tremendous amounts of sediment into the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see this on the top of this very odd multiple layered continental shelf. See, we have basically a flat continental shelf, and then we have this rigid continental shelf below that. But it's that rigid continental shelf that makes things so interesting for us. It's that rigid continental shelf that we used to have, like, French angelfish in Galveston, on Galveston Beach, like people catching them off the piers. You know, fishing for normal fishing stuff, and you catch a French angelfish. Well, those were probably coming off of that deep sea reef out there. And that's what it is. That's what that is. And by is, I mean was and could be. So, as sediment fills in an area like this, it kind of preserves the bedrock that it cements, and then this border forms around it because that bedrock isn't preserved and begins to crumble downward. And that's why you have this extremely productive possibility for aquascaping. Okay, and I don't just mean relying on machinery here, or even just mangrove trees, as I've discussed in the past. What we have here is an opportunity for planting seagrass. And I know we have lots and lots of sandbars, especially man-made sandbars, that seagrass would just do so much good on. They would be such a positive benefit. They would be such a preventer of red tides. Okay? And there's only 1-2 species to consider. Coleurpa prolifera, Coleurpa mexicana. Just like the same type of seagrass, only one grows longer. I don't even know which I have, okay? But whatever I have, it's the perfect freaking macroalgae. It's non-invasive. It's easily uprooted. It provides great shelter for all types of fry species. Seahorses even like it. And it provides food. It is extremely edible. All my fish just chow it down all day. Since they've all learned to like it, I mean, look. Shit just isn't growing in there anymore. Alright, where's that one? That one. Go back up that way. And go off. So I have this seagrass right there in the middle of this tank. Hi, Mr. Conway. In Ireland, he says, their climate depends on the Gulf being in good health. Yeah, I can see that. Especially the amount of Atlantic species that use the Gulf of Mexico for spawning. And that particular area right there, that's gotta be a spawning ground. I bet you we don't even know what lives out there, you know? So, if you consider just starting on the sandbars with prolifera and then finding current valleys that are already dead and planting codium, big patches, big fucking just codium, and just fucking drill them into the rock if you have to, because they can perform significant photosynthesis in very low light. I have had codium grow underneath 2 other types of algae in shitty light. How does codium grow? It just... Oh, look, there's an LED from something. I'll just grow that. Look, there's a photon. There's a photon. It's the most efficient aquatic plant I've ever conceived of. And it doesn't require trace elements. It just keeps fucking growing. I don't know how to describe it, other than it's just the best little plant you could ever want to have in a coral reef. So we need to cultivate more of it. You know, like if a fucking forest burnt down, you'd go and plant some more trees, right? Well, we've basically chemically burned the Gulf of Mexico. We've caused it to become a detritus cesspool that produces these it's hard to make a name for something that I can describe in like that many big words that just went through my head. Phosphorytic tidal plumes that have horrible alkalinity levels, sometimes very high calcium levels, which makes them very imbalanced and very hard to keep oxygen dissolved in. Extremely high nitrate levels, sometimes even high ammonia levels, because of the other things making the environment impossible for bacteria to process. Anything that all these other things just killed, you know? So you have all this shit that's dying, and then it's just making the water worse and worse and worse. And what happens is you have these dead zones from the lack of mitigation from the Mississippi, you know, foremost. And they produce these plumes of extremely low oxygen content, low alkalinity, low pH, you know, like basically relatively acidic water in the ocean. Okay. And when those plumes of water once again meet a high nutrient, high phosphate, high nitrate area from another river, the increased carbon dioxide, the lack of oxygen, makes a green tide turn red. And then you have not only just poison in the water, you have ammonia in the water, then you have cyanobacteria in the water. And then saltwater becomes basically an oxygen sponge. And then just kills more fish. More ammonia, more phosphates. Like, this cycle happening from these plumes that come from the dead zones. They're reactive, okay? They're not continual. There's still a lot of cyclical waves that have to happen around the entire Atlantic Ocean before it becomes terminal. But I'm glad it works this way. Mercy be that Mother Nature should give us her kiss and help us to survive our own dumbassness. I mean, this is like, okay, here, pay attention to this place, because I love you. I've put a big kiss right in the middle of it. She's a nice lady. Although, that does kind of make me think of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Never mind. Like, I almost see like a weird, like, bent face in there. So wait, if that's Mother Nature's lips, does that mean Orlando is her nostril? Never mind. Anyways. But, consider this. If this gulf didn't exist, this entire problem could sneak up on us and be irreparable by the time we noticed. When you think about it, the Gulf of Mexico is the Atlantic Ocean's sump. And by design, it seems that the most productive, fertile land on the planet at the point in history where machinery and population have exponentially increased, the would-be detrimental effects of such things happens to have a sump. Good job, God. I mean, what? Moving on. Was I bragging? I mean, no. Shh. Wrong channel. Yes, buildup of sediment. Buildup of sediment. That too. Wrong channel. I find that fascinating because that's just what it's supposed to happen. But I spy with my little eye. Am I gonna have to? Yeah, I will. I'll put that back down again and gonna make that go away. Or actually, yeah, let's do this. Oh my God, what the hell's going on there? Okay. Okay. I don't think I need to point it out. Remember what we were talking about on the other channel? With the magical rivers of India? Look at that, will you? Look at the old Mississippi indentations. Like, how much longer did it flow that way? How much longer was the continent shaped like that than it's been shaped like this? You know what I mean? That's fascinating. Look at that gaping indentation. That's from fresh water reducing the pH and causing the limestone, causing the calcium carbonate structures, magnesium and other alkaline minerals to dissolve. And you know, that's how the ocean regains its alkalinity. That's supposed to happen. But look at that, that's fascinating. And look at all that just potential out there. You know, that's some deep stuff. It's deeper than it looks. But it's not too deep for coating. It's not too deep for low light stony polyps. Probably ain't too deep for Hollywood stunner. Shit seems to grow anywhere. That green Monipora that kept bleaching out every time I put a little bit of light on it. Not too deep for that. Consider a self-replicating, solar-powered phosphate and nitrate filter that can be placed in the most undesirable real estate known to man. That's what you're looking at here with low light money poras and chalice corals. They keep the zooplankton from rotting in the water when they end their life cycles. Keep phytoplankton from blooming by consuming phosphates and nitrates just like plants. And I tell you, I just want to go ahead and open up MS Paint. And before I start, excuse me. Before I start hacking up my lungs for no reason. Before I start showing my little design, I want to kind of illustrate deployments and the effects of it. You know, like just kind of like convey the general vision here. You know. Let's see here. Where's the image I was just using? Will work just fine. I guess that's good enough. So, I'm just going to crop this. Alright, so here we are back where we were. And I guess I'll use purple. And I'm not going to be doing anything fancy here. I just want to kind of draw lines. Alright. Where we need the mangrove trees is reinforcing all along these islands here. Okay. Inside and out, everywhere. Okay. And we need to inundate all of Clackaman Parish, and the southern coast of Louisiana. With basically every effort we can put forth to creating a blockade of mangrove trees. Same thing with Brazoria County, Matagorda Bay. There are numerous coastal estuaries, small deltas, small islands, all of which can be protected and expanded by the massive cultivation of mangrove trees. And of course you again have this system of barrier islands from Alabama to Mississippi that can be largely connected, enhanced, and then eventually extended with mangrove trees. And again, forming a coastal blockade. Then all that remains is the Atchafalaya River Basin, and there are already massive amounts of man-built sandbars in this area, which can be reinforced again with mangrove trees. Now, mangrove trees do not make for good beach resorts. So where you don't have mangrove trees, where you want a beach resort, and I'm just going to go ahead and say in the future what we need to do is basically extend a sandbar, a series of sandbars. You know, you want to allow for coastal traffic and stuff. These aren't necessarily continuous lines. Each of these represent maybe a series of 1 mile stretches, even a quarter mile at a time, with, you know, like channels in between them. But eventually we would want to, you know, reinforce most of this area with wider, because most of the traffic out of here is just purely industrial. But then on the areas where you wanted pretty beaches, okay, Grand Isle being one of them, you got plenty of sandbars around there. You'd want mangroves in the areas where they can be decorative, they can be nice, where they can be protective. Okay, but obviously, you know, you want your beach to be a beach. This is where you put a sandbar out past where the beachgoers should be walking. Okay, and you can mark it off or whatever you have to do. Fishermen are going to love it. You make a big old seagrass bed. Okay? Get your big old seagrass bed right there. You got your big old seagrass bed up here on the little coastal resort areas of Mississippi. You know, Tallahassee and Jacksonville, and let's get Mobile, and some mangrove trees here, some mangrove trees here, mangrove trees here, mangrove trees here. You go out there, you got land trees, you got brackish water grass, you know, you got salt tolerant grass that grows on land. But if you go out into these big sediment ocean areas, it's just barren. It's just waiting to be cultivated. It's a fertile field that requires no plowing. And this will cease coastal erosion. These barriers will naturally reproduce and repair themselves. Over time, this will expand the coastline. And again, all the way down to the wonderful beaches of Florida, which, you actually have still some mangrove forest down here. What you need to do in these bays when you dredge them, you just need to basically cut a channel in the seagrass. And you don't necessarily need to replant it because it'll regrow from the outsides. And it's going to be growing towards the towards the shore areas anyways. But it's not like there's a big dredging problem right there in these bays. These are not bays that have a lot of that kind of problem. One problem I've observed about these bays, actually, that maybe we could do something about through a couple of clever channels here and here, is current. The water in these bays is more stagnant than it needs to be, especially in this one. And if you just provided an inlet on the far side for the positive pressure water coming down here, okay, maybe even make like a pier, or a dike, that goes offshore. And maybe a one-way tidal dike. You never want one of those coming at you on a surfboard. Never mind. But yeah, Florida, man. Should be something worth bragging about, and it's not. It's mediocre. Okay? And those two dikes right there don't even have to be above ground. Okay? You can run 30-foot pipe. I know 30-foot pipe exists. I've been inside one. Or two. Me and my friends, for all of our badassness, we wouldn't go far down that motherfucker, man. It was scary. And it did not smell good. That big ass pipe that lit out right by our fishing hole. So anyways, it'd be worth in our distant future, you know, once we're like exploring the galaxy and shit, to have a codium cultivation area here, a codium cultivation area here, and here, and codium cultivation area throughout this entire region. Might as well even, you got the Rio Grande right there, so you might as well go ahead and put another one right there. Even the Cubans have several areas they could benefit from these, and I know they do have, you know, a lot of south-facing heavy crop runoff rivers there. And again, you have an opportunity for mangroves, protecting coastal areas, allowing people to move out of mudslide-prone areas. Really should be the priority there. And this is a matter of taking small little areas and just, you know, a few hundred mangroves here, a few hundred mangroves here, a few hundred mangroves here, 1 year. And then the next year, you know, you just keep doing it. And then 10 years, and you've got, these don't represent solid lines of mangroves. These represent little quarter-mile strips planted strategically year by year, designed to grow over a century. Okay, that's what we have to start doing. If we want to start acting like grown-ups as people, if we want to consider someone qualified to be in a leadership position at a civilization-wide scale, something like a president, for God's sake, they should understand 100-year planning. Because we are a powerful force, and we have the ability to annihilate ourselves within a given 100 years should we fail to plan it out properly. We have that much of a profound effect on the atmosphere, on the ocean, on our very land, on our soil. It came out today. Fucking Cheerios. Fucking Quaker Oats. Quaker Oats. Cheerios. Be happy, be healthy. Like Cheerios, man. Contains herbicides. Roundup, the new thing that's been proven to have cancer. Roundup got Roundups in our Cheerios. I love Cheerios. Making me want to eat some Cheerios right now. Like, Roundup. At least I won't have weeds growing in my shit, you know. You know, I'm a fan of progress. I'm a fan of industry. I'm a fan of productivity. I'm a fan of free enterprise. I would like to start my own business, providing disaster-proof buildings for the people who would want to invest in the properties along the Gulf of Mexico. I'm currently taking investment in my sort of complex plan for coastal restoration initiatives. But there's a lot of money being poured into a lot of very wasteful things right now. Because we're planning on solving near-term problems. We're looking at things one at a time. And we're not looking at overall causalities. And even if we look at the causes, we look at solutions singularly. And, you know, a lot of wishful thinking versus things they can do that are hardly even worth doing, but they're simple and there's people bidding on it, and, you know, it keeps the economy going and jobs, and, you know, God. Well, let's just pretend this little delta view here. In fact, I don't even really need to zoom in on it. Or crop it, I mean. Let's just pretend this little delta view here is an actual river mouth. Okay? That's pretty easy to picture, right? And it even kind of looks just like Louisiana. Apparently that's what Louisiana used to look like, you know? Well, what you need here in the main flow areas, more so than the grasslands, starting, let's say, call this 30 miles upstream, or maybe even as few as 3 miles upstream. It's more about the flow of the flow of the river, and the relative ratio of how much you do, how far you have to spread it out for it to take effect. But what you want is basically baskets of calcium carbonate boulders. Okay, I guess I'll just make little balls, right? Baskets of calcium carbonate boulders. And you can just have them sitting on piers every couple of miles. You can have aquaculture facilities, you know, responsible for doing it, helping achieve status as net positive environmental impact structures. And you can send me some money so I can buy some more cigarettes. I mean, shit. Okay. I just have to make sure I don't just keep lighting them without thinking about it. So anyways. These calcium carbonate boulders are designed to do two things, but one primary thing. To dissolve. To slowly dissolve over time, releasing their minerals back into the water. And the reason why is because, in a nutshell, those nasty algae, okay, they feed off the same things that good algae, that kelp and caulerpa and all the macroalgae, all the pretty marine plants like I got in my aquarium live off of. Okay, it's the same food for them. Okay? The problem is the vitamins. The problem is the calcium, basically. And the minerals. You know, like they're not getting the beta carotene. They're not getting enough vitamin A. That kind of thing. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So from here, if you provide this alkalinity, if you provide this extra calcium into the fresh water, you don't create the dead zone out here. Okay? Because the acidity doesn't get imbalanced. So then the oxygen never gets sucked out of the water through the subsequent chemical processes. Now, then you have your opportunity to, in the edges of the brackish water zones, to start planting mangrove trees. And you can have a, you know, your seagrass land, all your marsh areas, right? Along the sides of the river, like we have on our Plaquemine Delta here, okay? And like you have on many split deltas. And then you have, then you have your river mouth, right? Let me just go ahead and just define the borders here. That's good enough, I guess. River. We'll just call that the coast there. So then you got your grassland, man. You got your marshes. Usually you got some marshy type shit up here at the mouth. It'll disperse in a few different directions. Mississippi is obviously a very old river. And here, again, mangrove trees. Mangrove trees to keep the grasslands from getting demolished by hurricanes. And in columns outward, and this is, drastically out of scale now, okay, drastically out of scale, but in columns outward of just, a quarter mile at a time, or freaking 500 feet at a time, you can eventually allow for grasslands to expand and to fill out into the ocean. Mangroves collect sediment and form land. There are filamentous bacterias and also just very fine filamentous roots that naturally grow on mangrove trees. And the amount of settlement that they can collect in just like 10, 20 years, it's enough to start growing non-salt tolerant plants in between a few mangrove trees. So instead of a storm coming through here and taking a bunch of sand and washing it out to sea, it'll take a bunch of sand and lap it up on top of those mangrove trees. And then those mangrove trees are going to spread out. But they're not going to handle everything. You're still missing one thing. And this is something that can be done at all those little shitty places I saw over here, just pouring crap into the water. Okay? What you need, protein skimmers. Not 5 mile wide protein skimmers, but still. Pretty big ones. You need some pretty big ones. You need to not worry about acrylics and aesthetics, that's for sure. You need to settle for square chambers built on top of plastic food barrels, for instance. For a collection cup, try a construction cone. And I'm going to show you in a second exactly how to utilize these things in a way that requires no collection. But if you want to collect it, collecting is going to be easy. But it's going to be it's not going to be a wet skimming protein skimmer, but it's going to be a long, narrowly collecting tube, being as, construction cones are the easiest, cheapest thing to use for it, and certainly already durable, certainly already an appropriate color for reflective warning, that kind of thing. But first, let's do a random song while I go take care of some business.
Still, if not my lover, so you ran and you took cover from the concerns of your life. And all I want is for you to see what you want is supposed to be. And all I need is for you to pray, for the way is the truth and the life is the way. You won't find another way. Take it back. Away, push me once, don't look back, just lie back and fade away. You will come back again, you won't repeat your sin, but you're not welcome anymore. Take it back, all those plastic dreams and lies you can't sustain. Take it back, what you'll really do is never what you say. Take back all your promises and throw the truth away. Push me what, don't look back, just lie back and fade away. Now you've got me by your talents and the love that you were meant when your words were only spoken to be broken to the script. If you meant what you had promised, you will fast and show me proof. But instead you ran away, I guess you never liked the truth. Take the knife of all your virtues out, what's left pure in my heart. Your intentions fail to mention that the lies would ever start. Prophet thing, a paper prophet, still if not my lover, don't you know there is no other, you still let us fall apart. You will come back again, you won't repeat your sin, but you're not welcome anymore. Take it back, all those plastic dreams and plastic answers. Take it back, what you'll really do is never what you say. Take it back, all your promises, throw the truth away. Take it back, don't look back, just lie back and fade away. Take it back, all what you do, what you say. Take it back, all what you do, what you say. I don't care what you do, what you say. I don't care what you do, what you say.
Alright, I fed all my little night shift fishies and did my top off refills and did my top off unfill. And okay, so we're talking about how to set up buoy and pier-based protein skimmers that can basically cost as little as possible, be as durable as possible, and be as low maintenance as possible, while providing a valuable service. Like, for instance, completely demolishing this idiotic excuse for a nuisance that is pestering Florida at the moment. And I mean it. Like, we are literally just letting it happen. The problem is that easy to solve. So, let me just go ahead and not save that. Select all and delete. Let me think for a second how I want to present this. Maybe like do like a 4-way cutaway kind of thing. Fine, be a prick. Alright. So I'm going to do a couple of boxings. I'm going to do my best to make them as proportionally accurate as possible. What you're looking at here is 4 8-foot by 4-foot pieces of plywood, basically. And then I'm gonna make that's a top-down cutaway. I'm gonna make a sideways cutaway, and then it'll all become clear as to how simple yet effective this is. Alright, that's just going to kind of need to be sloppily done for now. I recommend an extra large construction cone. Okay. Roll some cigarettes in. this is just bracing. That's still open to the water. There's water right there. Inside the cone. Just might as well just color the rest of it in. It's fucking plywood. Oh, that's a horrible proportion. Should be 4 feet, 4 feet. Alright, that'll work. Good enough anyways. Just do that the first time. Come on, you fucker. Alright, fine, be that way. And orange cone there. Wait, no. Forgot I have a small decline right there. And then we have our orange cone on top. It should be about 20 inches lower diameter with a 3 or 4 inch opening on top, which can be, easily trimmed to make it just a little bit wider if you wanted it a little bit wider, but the idea of a construction cone works for a lot of reasons. And having the narrow top is actually quite helpful when you consider what might happen during a storm. So, oop. When the wave comes over, it's okay if a little bit splashes in, rinses off one side. It's gonna, bubble up mostly. But the wider it gets, the more that splash in is gonna occur. Okay. And you can put a little dome on top of it. But if you consider how waves move, it's still gonna wind up splashing into there, getting into there. So the basic idea is this structure is designed a lot like a lifeboat, like my usual building series. Although the central beaming structure is completely unnecessary in this design. So what you wind up with is a sturdy little boat, or a sturdy little dinghy. It's very good at staying upright. It'll cut a wave in the middle and allow part of the wave to pass over, reducing the amount that it sways. That's just not the way to go there, is it? Alright, come on, you hoser. Alright. So you get the idea. It's a little dinghy. You can, if you want to, put a piece of wood over that just for added structural integrity for a dinghy as opposed to a dock mounted version or a dock tied version. You know, basically river and ocean version. Now, the skimming portion of this is pretty straightforward. You have food barrel, smaller food barrel, cut and joined, and then basically all you need down here is to drill holes and put some very coarse foam around it. Hard to clog, easy pass through foam. Okay. And let's see here. Just to illustrate. Ooh, no. No. and so on. Oh, guess I could have done that lighter. No, that's still not working for me. Big fucking foam. Okay, I'm talking like... No. Not so big that the mouse sticks in one place. There we go. Just a little beard. Okay. And you want to have sort of multiple layers of this shit. You want to have like an outer layer, maybe even consider just like some dangly hemp rope netting or something, like just something that life can easily attach to. Okay, you want a natural filter to sort of attach itself to this strainer. Okay, but the strainer needs to be very loose so it doesn't get clogged, and so it can let in algae blooms. Okay, now here's where you need a power source. You need 5 watts of power. And you can do some clever things in here to increase and decrease the efficiency of this, but to me, cross flow and direct skimming seems like it should be enough. But for instance, you can... Why is that? Oh. That's the right thing right there. Let's see, how would I inner outer chamber this thing? No, that'd be entirely too tall. Use a second barrel down here. Oh, I know I'm not too tired to figure out how a protein skimmer works. Alright, so the idea is you're going to want outlets after a chamber. Okay, so the bubbles go up and clean water comes down. Okay, and it's apparently really difficult for me to conceptualize that in 2D after having already drawn the holes in such a horrible place. But you would need to consolidate the input in order to make that kind of a skimmer. Anyways, but with this, the water just flows through it, and what you have is basically air infusers. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and run them down from where they'll need to be. And you'll only need one pump to run several lines and have, you know. And of course, you also have the option, if you want to consolidate it, you can have a DC pump and run it solar power, and then it only works in the daytime. But that's kind of for the best when you consider how the entire design operates. But I'm just trying to make, you know, just the simplest freaking example of a protein skimmer here, so I can, you know, move the hell along. So, in this version, you're going to have some giant wooden air block stones and, you know, hard acrylic line made to last, you know, at least going to be bubbling for a couple of years effectively. And of course, what you probably want to do is have the setup just a little bit overpowered. And like I said, the best way to go is to keep it DC. Make everything solar. And here, let me go ahead and patch in the solar panels, because that'll bring me right to the final stage of the processing. Alright. No. There we go. So your solar panels, you've got a couple options for locating them. Here and here, or assuming we can use smaller ones. Shit. Come on, give it to me. There. I like so. Now from there, you have a problem. The fuckers are going to get dirty. Okay? So, what you need is, you know, something to justify all of these solar panels, because clearly that many solar panels is going to be too much for a simple air pump. That's overkill. Okay? Now, if I was to say, take some windshield washer misters, and have a couple little drums of distilled water in there to wash away salt and grime, and combine that unit with a deflector for the real bullshit, we could keep those solar panels in relatively decent shape between once a week maintenance. Okay, and that's where the once a week maintenance really comes in. So, let's see if I can even pull that off here. So that's going on the other side. And these things, you don't want them running often enough to where they're going to keep the surface of this wet and growing algae. You just want them running often enough to keep salt creep and shit from going on there. So you might want some sort of, I don't know, passive sensor or something like that. There's a few things you could do with it that wouldn't cost too much. Especially considering that, you know, this is likely to be mass produced. Really? All right. So, what happens from here? Well, basically, this gets allowed to overflow right onto the roof of this shit. Assuming that it will always stay moist. Oh. How do I even get back to that? Did I just draw little triangles in there? Oh shit. I was wondering why that one came out so thick. So this is designed to slowly drizzle down the side and absorb into the wood so that the wood can grow hair algae. So basically, depending on which way the wind's blowing, well, first you're gonna get some just nasty funk. Okay. Why is that? Oh, I'm still on it. Okay. Damn it. Some nasty funk, and then hair algae. And maybe a little bit when the wind changes direction, it'll go down the opposite way. But probably not all these different paths are going to be used, okay? And that's going to cake up and going to need to be, you know, scraped off once a month. And at the same time, you can have somebody just go up in there take the bottom section of the sponge off or something like that, and just fucking dive right up in there if they wanted to. Clean out the inside maybe a couple times a year. But you come clean them solar panels maybe once a week. They don't need to be running at peak efficiency, you know. But they're going to have to be designed to resist the splash off. Okay. But the idea is, when this thing gets hit by waves, water's going to come up on here. And it's going to hit this a little bit at a time. Sometimes it'll hit it a lot. Sometimes it'll fuck up the process. But the idea is to build this in a proportion where in the Gulf of Mexico, we have like 2 to 3 feet waves, okay? And if you can get them slapping up against this guy, and you can even, you know, vary the angle, vary the size, depending on where you want to put them. The efficiency will vary, but the idea is this elongated skimming chamber will take the phytoplankton blooms and a lot of the proteins and nutrients in the water that are causing them, and the toxins those phytoplanktons produce, bubble it all up in here, okay, and eventually this foam reaches the top. And when it does, it comes out like mud. Just like, and then you want ocean water just splashing it and slopping it up against this. And as it runs down, the sunlight is going to power your filter. Now, you might be able to reduce maintenance and cost and actually make a better system without the solar panels altogether. Okay? That's just like one of the options. I'm just trying to show like a lot of different things. But there is plenty of flotation capacity here and plenty of extra space for a significant battery, long-term battery pack. Oh. But anyways, if you wanted to rig this up to a hose, you could theoretically have like a collection chamber on here and use this to create biodiesel. You know, just basically have a barrel sitting on all four sides if you wanted to, and just swap them out and collect. Whew. I really don't feel good at the moment. Try some lemon flavored sparkling water. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. I've been feeling bad for a couple days now, actually. Oh, okay, I wasn't expecting much out of that, but that is not tasty. I think that people pay money for this. Oh. Okay, I think I'm going to go for the Sprite. Ah, much better. Holy crap. I don't know what the fuck I just tasted. So anyways. Another option might be a single solar panel up on top of here. And the thing about the DC pump, okay, it would only work during, you know, daytime hours, right? If you had it augmenting a battery and set it up to do like a low power mode at night, you could have just enough bubbles and power to keep the skim mate in the chamber overnight. And then during the day, when the algae would be processing it, is when you would, you know, have the increased flow, the increased bubbles, and have that just kind of churning up over the side and just dripping down. And this is basically the same principle as an algae scrubber filter. but combines it with a protein skimmer. And basically, you would want to make this thing as powerful as that crazy, oversized intake strainer looks like it should have. As powerful as you could rig up with the solar panels. And considering what solar panels are designed for these days and how much space they take up, there's just really no problem there. We have really highly efficient DC powered pumps that can be used for this application. So, anybody got any questions? You could set up a pier with a bunch of these units off of it, and not even need the box structure, just build a smaller version of it. You know, you could float a barrel-made protein skimmer on some other food barrels to float them, and then still be using the construction cone as a collector, and then attach a tube to it and collect it right there for biodiesel. Or if you're going to do it in a freshwater area, protein skimming does work in freshwater, especially, you know, polluted, nasty bullshit freshwater. You can theoretically, as long as there's not too much petrochemical compounds, collect it for use as fertilizer. I suppose it could actually work quite well as decorative plant fertilizer, you know. Like, big warning, not for food consumption, but, you know, I mean, shit, God knows what they use already anyways today. Oh. Not too sure what's going on with my stomach here. So I'm gonna give a couple seconds if anybody wants to ask any questions. I'm gonna call this a broadcast, folks. So, alright. I just feel toxic. I gotta take a shower or something. After I finish drinking my Sprite. A little traumatized by whatever that shit was that I just had. Lemon flavored sparkling water. I should have knew it was a bad sign when it said no sugar. So, questions going once? So for every one of these we build, for every gallon of muck we skim. That's another 100 square feet of red tide that won't be happening. And in places like Orlando and Tampa Bay, oh, they'd just be so useful. Even the extra flow provided would be useful, and they'd really they'd make a tremendous difference on the overall quality of life for the animals that live out there. Even manatees would probably be suffering less skin diseases and parasites and shit like that, just because of the, the water quality. When you have shit like that blooming, it's because the water quality's bad. I think in 30 years of reefing, I can say with absolute certainty the one thing that makes the most difference on a reef tank is the protein skimmer. You can turn shit water clear in no time just by adding a protein skimmer to a tank. And the only kind of tanks that don't need a protein skimmer are, understocked, regular water change type systems. Anybody who wants to have a lot of fish, and especially anybody who wants to feed the fish frequently, if you don't have a protein skimmer, your water's going to turn brown. So, here's our fish tank. It's turned brown. We need to increase the alkalinity. We need to add some protein skimmers. And we need to do some refugium work. And everything we do, we can help restore the coast of Louisiana and all the other wetland, all the other wetland enriched areas. I'd even consider combining these little guys here, if you want to arrange them in a grid on a pier, combine them with mangrove planters and have trees growing out of them, eventually overtaking them. And by the time the trees destroy its ability to be a protein skimmer, you won't need the protein skimmer anymore because there will be enough mangrove tree. I like how that works, which is another reason why you should make it out of biodegradable wood and stuff. All these fancy composite printed things and their ability to reduce labor costs are fascinating and all, but there's a lot of people who all they know how to do is cut wood and screw it together, and we could just give them jobs. Anyways, so that's going to be all for now. I'm in desperate need of ending this broadcast, and I see nobody's asked any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and call it a broadcast. I thank everybody for watching. Please click the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Y'all take it easy, but don't take it all.
I can't take a breath. I can't